And trust me, having a real estate license and having sold property, that's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, because you look at the LO, and again, you have access through NMLS. You don't know how long somebody's been in the business.
Yeah.
And truly, like you said, are they qualified? It's like going to a dentist. What's the level of pain? 0 to 10? In the mortgage business, we could invent that and say, this guy's a 10.
This guy's a 10.
Right? You call some LOs, right? And they'd be like, I'd hang up and go, this guy might be a 2 or a 3.
Welcome to another episode of the Contacts to Contracts podcast. I am Bryan Level, always with the incomparable co-host,
dynamic
stud, John Jones.
The yin to Bryan Jang.
Dude, I love it. Let's have some fun today. All right, so we kind of had a conversation that we felt like, we're in a pretty unique market, right? Unique by no slowdown of buyers, by the way, coming into the market, but inventories getting pretty ridiculous, right? I mean, we thought we were in a low inventory situation. Now we're really in a low inventory situation. And it's becoming a competitive market, especially if you're coming to the table with financing. So we just figured we have a little bit of a conversation about what are some things that a loan originator could be doing in this market right now to help their buyer's offer get separated from the rest. Like how do we give a little bit of extra special attention
Spruce
to it?
up, when there's 6, 7, 8, 10 offers on the table, make your offer, stand
out on the crowd.
Yeah.
Stand out from the crowd.
I like it.
So give me what are your first thoughts?
Well, we talk probably about, TBD underwrites, right? If you're going to be working with buyers in this market, right? You're competing in many cases with multiple cash investors or just cash buyers, period. Mm-hmm. And if there's financing in place that, if you're a realtor out there working with buyers, a pre-approval means nothing in this market. Really, they need to be fully underwritten, subject to the appraisal and inspection.
Yeah.
And that, in many cases, that's what we're doing here at Van Dyke Mortgage.
Yep.
A lot of other lenders have that same program, but you've got to be TBD fully underwritten and get that message out there that when you're presenting an offer, this person is fully underwritten, with a loan commitment. Yeah,
I think just to give some clarity to a TBD underwrite, you're having the entire file underwritten with the exception of an appraisal, right? So you're not underwriting. Good point.
To be determined.
You're
property,
underwriting the borrower, but not the property, and
verified income, assets, employment, everything. All the way through underwriting, not just that the loan officers looked at that information and determined that they're good to go.
Yeah.
This is going all the way right through underwriting without the property appraisal.
Yeah. And I think, by the way, I think even once you get under contract and you get to that appraisal stage, I think you can do some pretty fast turn times on these. And for one reason is we know that desktop appraisals are coming out with Fannie and Freddie here pretty soon.
Right.
And that's going to provide some opportunities where maybe appraisal turn times go, we're seeing in some parts of the country, like out west, 4 to 6 weeks. We're in Florida, we're seeing locally 2 to 3 weeks maybe for an appraisal, but that could literally get down to a couple of days.
Right.
So if you've already got a TBD underwrite done and you get the luck of the draw on the desktop
We've
appraisal.
seen a few done in 3 or 4 days in the past couple of weeks, so that's a good sign for our industry. But we're at the mercy, I guess, at order a rush appraisal and close it in 2 to 3 weeks. But in many cases, let's be realistic. Unless the property's vacant, a seller typically wants 30 days.
Oh, they need time to move.
Pack up and get ready to get out of that property. If I'm selling my house and you tell me 10, 15 days, I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff in my garage. I know that.
By the way, I've lived in my house for 17 years. At this point, I'm not moving because I don't want to have to deal with all of that crap. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I would need to pull up one of those dumpsters. Because I can't even imagine. And maybe I should do that anyway.
Yeah, it's a good idea, man. Declutter. About 5 years ago, I actually got a pod. Okay. Put it out there because I wanted to repaint the floor in my garage. Took everything out, weeded through. The only stuff that went back in essentially was the stuff that we wanted to keep.
Yes.
And I need to do that again, by the way.
Yeah. You can only imagine what my attic looked like after 17 years.
So what else do we got? We've got the TBD underwrite. So once you're at that stage, Bryan, what's a good tip If you're working with a realtor and the realtor is going to submit an offer, what are some of the LOs doing out there?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question because I think you have to do something that says this is a fully underwritten file. So there's a difference between sending a pre-approval letter that your buyer's agent is going to use with the offer. But I would create a marketing piece that explains what a TBD underwrite is.
Sure.
Right. So that you can give some credibility to, hey, this isn't just a pre-approval. This file has already been underwritten. We are literally contingent on an appraisal. And I think it needs to be kind of flashy.
So that piece
it
is going
needs
to
to stand out.
That piece is something you put together with the offer and send in, right?
Yes.
Okay. I like it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So,
in addition to that, what else do you think some of these folks might want to consider doing?
So here's one of the things. You and I, we had an opportunity to talk to Chance Adamson a couple of weeks ago. He's a real estate agent in the
awesome agent in Georgia,
just south of Atlanta in Georgia. And one of the things I heard him say was, as a listing agent, he doesn't take an offer that he didn't talk to the LO about. Right. So he's going over offers with his sellers. They're picking out whatever the top ones are. And then Chance starts calling the loan officers.
Yep.
So the first tip to you loan officers, if the listing agent is calling you,
pick up the phone.
And like he shared with us that sometimes
they don't even return the call.
They don't even return the call.
Right.
Like, it's too hard out there right now for your buyers, for you not to take a phone call from the listing agent on the property they just made an offer on.
Right.
Right. But the other side of that is I think most loan officers are good enough that they're going to take that call. But you need to have your junk together. Like, Chance shared with us, he's like, hey, I've gotten off of calls with some of these loan officers, and I'm like, I don't know that they know
if that's a doable loan.
What's going on, right? Like they can't speak the language, or they can't communicate in a professional manner. And, he even shared that in some of those cases, he's gone back to the buyer's agent and said, hey, I just want to let you know, we like your offer, but I talked to your loan originator. They're not great. And I'm not sure if we truly have a pre-approval or not, right? And in some cases, what he shared is that, that buyer's agent will call their loan officer, right? Because they probably referred them and said, hey, we've got a shot here to get this deal. I need you to beef this thing up a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. And goes through the steps of doing that. But there's been some cases where Chance said, they were like, hey, if whatever we got to do to win this deal, we're even willing to move it to a different loan originator.
Yeah.
Right. So I just think, you and I have been talking over the past couple of weeks that we're in a market right now where the professionals are going to rise to the top, right? Anybody can do loans. I shouldn't say anybody. This is the first time for a lot of people in this career that have been in an increasing rate market, right, in their entire career.
Big increasing rate market. Took some calls this week already.
Listen, I'm going to give you some stats.
I want to give you numbers on, but I'm
going to give you some numbers here in a minute.
Mid fives, yeah.
But we're in the first time in some of our careers we're in an increasing rate market where we're also under the constraints of this tight inventory, right? And there's a lot of factors that are going into how do we make sure that these deals hit at the top. So anyways, what I'm saying is, hey, let's be professionals. Let's do a good job up front. Let's put these buyers in the best position to be successful. We're not in the, when the last couple of years, whether it was purchases or refis, we were churning and burning. Right? I mean, like loans were coming in fast. You could go to lunch and come back and have 3 loans.
Entirely shifting gears. Now you've got to really grind and work hard to get your deal across the finish line, right? Not necessarily because the consumer's not qualified, but because of the shortage of inventory. So, I mean, if you're out there and you're in the mortgage business, you want to let your realtor referral partners know that part of your team, your commitment is to, I'm going to get on the phone and I'm going to call when you submit an offer.
Yeah.
I'm going to call the listing agent. I'm going to explain without giving details that the offer from this borrower, they're qualified, they've been fully underwritten. I'm going to call you every week. I'm going to keep you updated throughout the process, where we are with the inspections and appraisals and getting it across the finish line. I mean, I think, talking to Chance last week or a couple of weeks ago, those are the deals that are getting accepted. It's just that little verbal communication in addition to the marketing piece submitted with the offer. You've got to pick up the phone. I mean, we've heard it. We've done some panels recently where we've had agents with 10, 12 offers. Only one LO calls to say how qualified their buyer is and the buyer's offer.
Yeah.
And trust me, having a real estate license and having sold property, that's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, because you look at the LO, and again, you have access through NMLS. You don't know how long somebody's been in the business.
Yeah.
And truly, like you said, are they qualified? It's like going to a dentist. What's the level of pain? 0 to 10? In the mortgage business, we could invent that and say, this guy's a 10.
This guy's a 10.
Right? You call some LOs, right? And they'd be like, I'd hang up and go, this guy might be a 2 or a 3. I mean, that's the odds of getting it across the finish line after the conversation with the loan originator on the other end.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're in this business trying to get buyer offers accepted, you need to let your agent know that you're partnered with. You will pick up the phone and you will speak on behalf of the borrower and the offer that it's qualified and ready to close.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because again, not every agent is as diligent as, say, Chance, right? Where he's the one
he's
picking
actually
up the
calling out.
So not every listing agent is going to do that for their clients. So in that
if
case,
you're listening to this podcast right now and you're a listing agent, you should be doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to take the top 3, 2, 3, 4 offers. If there's financing, you want to check how long the LO's been in business.
Yeah.
Is it a local lender? Or is it a lender out of state that doesn't necessarily, how did the customer find the loan officer? That was one of the things that I always looked at. If the consumer finds the loan originator directly and the realtor didn't refer that person, that loan officer doesn't care. They're not as much vested because the referral came to them and not through the realtor.
Yeah.
So they're not going to work as hard.
Yeah.
And they may be located out of state. And if the loan has a hiccup and it doesn't close on time, they're still going to go home at 5 o'clock on Thursday and it's not going to matter to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where a local person that you're in partnership with, I mean, they're going to pick up the phone at 7 at night. They're going to fight to get the deal closed, and they're going to continue to work as partners, with that relationship.
Yep. Yeah, I just think, the point you're hammering home right now is, hey, Mr. and Mrs. LO, you need to be picking up the phone and reaching out to the listing agent yourself and saying, hey, I just want to let you know my buyer is making an offer on 123 Main Street. And here's the steps and the process that I've gone through to make sure that this is a qualified buyer. And by the way, I think it's if you're doing TBDs, it's a great time to bring that up too. Hey, you're going to see something a little bit different in the way that this buyer's agent makes an offer. And listen, not for nothing, switching gears a little bit, John, doing something like that, like we're all in the business where we're trying to get new relationships, right? If you're reaching out to, whether your buyer wins that deal or not, if you're reaching out to a listing agent with that level of professionalism, do you think you're going to stand out from the crowd with them?
Probably get an appointment later.
Yeah.
Whether or not the deal gets accepted or not, you're probably likely to call them the following week and say, hey, by the way, I'd love to meet with you one-on-one, have coffee, and talk to you a little bit about the service I can provide.
Yeah, I mean, you might earn some business that way. It's interesting. We talked about this on a forum yesterday with, 100 people or so, and there was you and I are talking about this stuff like this is the biggest no-brainer in the history of Earth. And, we got a group of highly seasoned loan originators who were like, wow, never thought to do that. Right. So I know I'm just looking at our segment.
It's a new world, my friend. This is the post-COVID, no inventory. It's a battle.
Yeah.
And again, you go back to if there's 4 or 5 offers on the table and probably 2 or 3 cash, and your guy's trying to finance it, you've got to really stand out and stick out.
Yeah.
Even to the point where we talk about, what about the appraisal? What's going to happen? The property's selling. We've got it sold for $300, right? Is it going to appraise? Can they cover the difference, right? So if you're working with a customer that's able to do that, you need to communicate that to both agents.
Yeah.
And there's an understanding that, hey, we have a plan. If this doesn't hit this mark, we can still close this deal.
Hey, you just made me think of something too. We see a lot of conventional buyers that are bringing 20% or more to the table when they don't really need to. And, we're in a situation where a lot of people are having to make a bid over ask, right?
Oh, yeah.
And instead of putting 20% down, what if you only put 5% down? I would look at the rates on what upfront MI is. instead of doing a monthly MI? Could you buy out the MI for 1 or 2 points? I haven't looked. I haven't priced that out recently, but then you've got a lot more assets to play with that you can use in your bid over ask. So again, this goes back to loan officers have to be professionals in this market today,
and that means being creative,
right? And that means being creative.
Know how to work the numbers to your advantage.
Yeah, absolutely.
And communicate that when you're when you're doing the pre-approval, the initial stage with the borrower. I mean, and the agent that referred the customer to you. This all has to be like, you have to have a game plan. What are you willing to do? What are you willing to do this? Put less down and go this route and have a plan.
Yeah. Hey, I'm gonna throw another idea at you. We didn't really talk about. So I had a conversation this week with a company called Easy Knock. Have you heard of Easy Knock?
I have.
All right. So I by the way, I didn't ask their permission to discuss this, but I'm sure they're not going to mind a little bit of marketing, right?
All right. Sure.
But what I like about what Easy Knock is doing is they are a service out there that's partnering with loan officers and real estate agents, right? So loan officer, real estate agent are working together. They bring in Easy Knock. What Easy Knock, and there's companies like this that are popping up all over the place now.
Yes, yeah, I've looked at a few, yeah.
So Easy Knock, let's say they buy the property that the buyer is currently living in, okay? So they're giving them the assets that they need to purchase the new property, but they're also now making their offer not contingent on the sale of another property, right? So solves two challenges there. They then lease the property back to the buyer, right? So now the buyer has time, because they have a lease back option anyway, to go look for that home that they need. Now, once they win that contract and they buy the new home, they, with their existing agent, go and list the property. This is one of the things I think is cool. If the property appreciated in the time from Easy Knock buying it to them listing it, they get the appreciation on it.
Is it shared, or is it they get it all?
Nope, they get it all, right?
Okay.
So, it makes me think, like, if I'm structuring a deal and this is like something I want to do, the other thing is a lot of servicers will allow for a one-time payment recast. Meaning, if you then took the net proceeds, if you had the net proceeds of your home still left, let's say it was $100,000, right? You didn't put all of your money into the new purchase. On your new mortgage, you could make that $100,000 payment
and recast it,
and your payment would recast based on the new principal balance. Your payment, your PIT.
Pro tip: make sure the lender you're working with, you verify,
that,
and that's allowed.
Yeah,
not every lender allows
and
that.
what the time frame is. Some of them allow it immediately. Some of them want 6 months. It just depends what it is. But dude, I think
I love it. Yeah,
there are companies like that popping up everywhere. I think that's a great option in the market that we're in.
So how about this one? The same type of company, Easy Knock, probably offers this as well, that you have 30 days to get a financing done. In the event that financing falls through, or you're not able to close and fund in the 30 days, Easy Knock comes in and pays cash for the property, and the deal closes and funds anyway.
Yep.
And then the buyer now has 6 months. The same concept works. They have 6 months to then obtain financing on the home. That Easy Knock, and I'm not sure if it's Easy Knock that does that, but I've seen a lot of that.
There's some other companies,
some other folks that are doing that as well. So it's getting creative.
Yeah.
To our point here. So back to the LOs not picking up the phone and calling on offers that are being submitted. You're probably going to fall to the wayside, because that's how competitive of a market we're in.
Yeah. It just made me think we should call some of these folks and have them on the podcast as guests.
That's a good idea. I like that.
So cool.
Yeah.
Well, man, can you think of any other tips or tricks that LOs could use in this market?
So
help theirs stand out?
I was listening to somebody on a podcast last week that was talking about a similar thing we're talking about, but they actually have the buyer's agent conference in the home seller along with the listing agent to communicate how qualified the borrower is.
Wow, so they're bringing in the seller of the home too?
The seller, so if that offer is going to be considered, they want the seller to hear how strong qualified the borrower is.
Okay.
And we're assuming on a TBD underwrite
that
everything is good, that here's where we're at, we just need the property appraised, and we're ready to close.
Yeah. Man, I don't know, as a seller, I don't know if I would love that. I mean, I get it. I think it's a strong strategy.
The listing, that's if the seller will, if the listing agent will agree to that. But,
sure.
Not every seller wants to know too much, and it's not details on financials. But,
yeah.
I think it's just a feel good. Like, all right, this is the best offer.
Yeah.
But it's $5,000 higher than the cash offer. Should I take cash or should I, how good do we feel about this deal actually closing in 30 days?
Yeah. It takes me back to the short sale days. Like, do you remember like 08, 09?
Well, speaking of going back in, so if you're out there and you're a seller right now, just shifting gears again, something that when you said short sales. So these cash offers that we're up against in the market right now, okay, here's a strategy that the large investment firms are using, right? I'm going to overbid on everybody. And it's going to feel and look awesome because it's $50,000 higher than what you're asking, and it's going to blow everybody else out of the water. As that deal goes through, they start inspecting and whittling away, and often that deal that looks amazing 2-3 weeks into just before closing gets whittled down to lower than some of the offers that were presented. Now, as a seller, you can decide, hey, I'm not in agreement with this, and I can walk and start this process again. Or I'm going to close. Now, remember, like psychologically, I wanted 3. They offered $350. They're down to $320. That pisses me off. I turned away a $330 and a $335 finance deal. Right? Where do I want to go? Do I want to have to start this again or close next week? So that's the strategy that you as a seller, you got to watch out for. They are sharp. They're sharks out there.
So you're saying seller
beware of what they're going to find.
Institutional buyers.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. And
by the way, an institutional buyer is going to stand out to you because it's not going to be Bryan Lovell or John Jones. It's going to be some LLC that's buying the home. So you're saying seller beware of institutional buyers.
I mean, they're going to come up with,
I think you make a valid point.
Hey, here's what we're going to need to do. We're going to need the roof repaired. We're going to need this, that. This is our counter, right? Because they're going to do their due, unless it's cash, no inspection period. Oftentimes they'll put a 3-5 day inspection. They'll go send somebody out there, and then they'll try to whittle it down a bit. So, be on the lookout for that out there.
What I was going to say about reminds me of short sale days is I remember we would use TBDs with our offers on short sales because, you'd make an offer on a short sale, buyer and seller agree, right? They have the meeting of the minds. And then we wait
6 months.
we wait, you're right, for the bank to accept the short sale. And then boom, buyer doesn't qualify. Like that was happening
all the time.
Right. And so one of the things that we were saying to agents back then was, hey, make sure you're making an offer with a TBD buyer so that 6 months from now when the short sale approval finally comes in, you can actually close. That's what it reminded me of. So cool. Well, dude, man, we just gave a lot of stuff.
Good information, man. It's
nice job.
It's a challenging market out there. Probably a whole other podcast on talking about institutional buyers. Maybe we need to line something up on that.
I would love to do that. Steve Richmond, guest of the show, he sent me that idea yesterday.
I mean, we're hearing more and more about, the frustration in the local real estate community about being up against these hedge funds that are coming in. And, one of the things, just talking to a few people this week, home sellers aren't aware of what the strategy is doing that. Now, I read a report that all homes sold in January nationwide, 22% were in institutional investors.
Wow.
So they are coming at us, hard. And I think
that makes me worry.
It makes me want to put a lot of information out there now that if you're selling a home, we need roofs over our head in America, but I feel like they're trying to turn America into a nation of renters. And homeowners. So home ownership is where we build all of our wealth.
My concern would be those institutional buyers are eliminating the first-time home buyer. And listen, I don't mean to make this political, but I think in our country you're already seeing a division of the haves and the have-nots. What I'm meaning is we're seeing the erosion of the middle class
going away.
Right, and institutional buyers like that are contributing to it.
Yeah, and here's the last tip on this, and I read something a couple of days ago on this. We borrow money at about 4% today on a mortgage. The institutional buyer, even though they're paying cash, is borrowing that money at about 1.5% through the hedge fund. So they are, in effect, borrowing at such a cheap rate, they can afford on average to spend $20,000 to $30,000 more on that same asset.
Wow.
And be equal with the consumer. So, I mean, they're playing at an advantage for sure.
Yeah.
on a large scale.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's a whole nother podcast out there again.
It's funny. We've been talking about creating a content calendar and doing a better job of having some lined up. We just named like 5.
Yeah, we definitely might hit that one up real soon.
So that's cool. Hey, man. Well, nice job.
Good job, man. That's work hard out there and, stay at it. It's going to be a challenging year.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
So anyways, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Contacts to Contracts podcast. On behalf of John Jones, I'm Bryan Lovell. And if there's anything you need, we're always here to serve.